Sean, we have Mr. Stephen Hunter on the episode again today. How are you, sir?
Welcome
Very
back.
well, thank you. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Doing good. Survived the holidays with family without killing anybody. So
That's a rough one. I agree.
From Cook County Jail.
and I still have booze left, which is a miracle.
Oh, man. Well, Stephen, it's been a little while since we had you in the show last time, and you've got a new book, new Bob Lee's Swagger book, Targeted, and it's your 12th featuring Bob Lee Swagger as your protagonist, as we all know and love. So at this point, can you give us a little quick elevator pitch on what's in store for your protagonist this time around?
The book comes out of a feeling I've had for many years, and that is the vulgarity and annoyance of men of inaction putting on trial men of action for things that the men of action have done in action. And I just find that appalling. And that's particularly, it's relevant, I think, right now because of the Kim Potter debacle in Minnesota, I guess it is. Maybe Wisconsin. It just makes me angry that people do things to defend us, and then we criticize them and use the law to destroy their lives. So in this book, Bob, who in the last book took a shot that saved someone's life, is on trial, not technically on trial, but he's the subject of a House hearing. Mm-hmm. And all sorts of very smart people who've never had a callus on their hands in their lives are telling him what he did wrong and what he should have done and how guilty he should feel. And he's defending himself actually rather well. But the point of the book is that at a certain moment, it changes radically. And suddenly, instead of having vague class contempt for him, they need him to save their lives because the hearing is invaded. The hearing is in Boise, Idaho. It's invaded by some very nasty folks. And suddenly, everything that they've been talking about is no longer theory. It's realistic. Mm-hmm. It's reality. It is what is going on in that moment, and it has to be dealt with forcefully. And the only one who's capable of dealing with it forcefully, even if he's 75 years old, is Bob Lee Swagger. And that's the book.
Awesome. Amen. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Well, it's obviously, and you kind of alluded to this, it's very easy to connect the environment of the book's congressional location with real life January 6th and the Capitol issue. Did the January 6th event influence you in your decision for the book premise, or had you consulted a clairvoyant and actually made it occur through your book there?
The January 6th meme that I'm running into is entirely serendipitous. I had who knew that this was going to happen? I guess some people didn't. I certainly did. I certainly wasn't one of them. No, it was more it actually began with the impeachment effort against Brett Kavanaugh, where people were judging this guy on the basis of extremely sketchy information, and not just judging him, basically trying to destroy him. And I just found that grotesquely unfair. And it wasn't long before I took that and put it into a scenario that I could deal with that was consistent with my information and with the attitudes of my characters and the back history, the backstory of them all. And that was really had more to do with it than did January 6th.
All right.
Well, Targeted places Swagger in the crosshairs of the political class, as you said, pushing an agenda. And it's kind of a winner-take-all situation that seems to play out more and more in real life these days. It's not just fiction. With traditional decorum and behavior no longer even being paid lip service by our legislators and leaders, do you think we're witnessing, and this is more of a philosophical question, but your book had me thinking about it. Do you think we're witnessing a de-evolution of the American political system, or is this just another phase in a back and forth cycle that we've seen since the beginning in 1770 5, actually.
I would certainly prefer and hope to believe in the second possibility than the first possibility. I know that one feature of history is that no matter when you're alive, you think that end times begin tomorrow.
Yeah.
And somehow they never do. I believe that we are at the apogee of a swing in a certain direction, and that the sheer weight of the pendulum will bring it back in the other direction. So no, I don't immediately foresee the destruction. I don't foresee civil war. I don't see catastrophe. I do think it's important that these things be discussed. And that is why what's more upsetting to me than anything that's actively going on, more upsetting to me is sort of a closure or a shutting down of vocal possibilities. Certain voices are no longer welcome in public, and if you sound certain melodies, you destroy yourself. You are destroyed rather quickly. That I find that much more repellent than the actual politics behind this or that movement. Yeah. And I hope this book is if it's nothing else, it's a satire that points out that politics is inevitably corrupt, and that as we swing back and forth, now would not be a bad time to swing back.
Yeah. I completely agree with what you're saying, especially about the voicing of ideas. It used to be
ideas don't kill people.
Right.
Kill people. Okay?
Right. Ironically enough, what I've been thinking about a lot lately is written by a more liberal screenwriter, and it's there's a line in The American President, that movie that came, that romantic comedy that came out, where he's talking about he's at the podium. He said, you want freedom, then you have to voice support for somebody who would yell at the top of their lungs that which you hate, with the same passion that you yell at. And I'm butchering the quote, but you remember what I'm talking about. And that, I think about that quote all the time, every time I turn on the news or get on social media.
It's a very powerful, you garbled the quote, but I'm going to assume I know what you were trying to say. And let me just say that, assuming you're not insane, and I don't think you are, I totally agree with that. And everyone should be able to say whatever they want, as long as it's not obscene or explosively incendiary. And the charge of explosive incendiarity, if such a word exists, should be very, very regretfully and almost never applied. It's just too easy to say, oh, that's incendiary, ban it. No. If you think it's incendiary, you've got to prove that it's incendiary.
Right.
A very specific legal degree as applied to a very specific circumstance. That would be my policy.
Agreed.
Well, in Targeted,
let me just say this. I don't want to close anybody down.
Right.
Well, sure.
Anyone can call me anything they want, and that's fine. I'm not going to get, neurotic about it. It doesn't really do me any harm. But I don't want to be closed down either. And so that's where we are. And you guys don't want to be closed down early.
No.
Do try not to garble the quotes from now on, okay?
It's Sean. He's been drinking.
It was off the cuff. I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna edit me saying it properly into the interview. So
okay.
The lips won't match with the quote. So, well, and we're alluding to this now, but we see the very people in Congress looking to bury Swagger suddenly come to rely on his skills for their very survival. So much like those calling for a defunding of the police who enjoy personal protection from those very same individuals, I can't help see the level of hypocrisy in both scenarios. So is there any way to reconcile the pursuit of destruction of the protectors like Swagger, who remain obviously necessary for society in general?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And of course, the answer will vary depending on the circumstances. I'm no fan of police brutality or police ugliness because I have a fat mouth and I don't like tickets, I've had a number of run-ins with the police. I almost got arrested once. So I understand how that power can be abused, but it's in some ways, how can I say this in some way that'll make sense? You have to accept you can't demand perfection from a large, sloppy system. And the system is big and slow and stupid and sloppy, and it is going to make mistakes. However, if it makes those mistakes, in my opinion, that does not call for its destruction. To go from one cop doing something stupid to defunding the police strikes me as an extravagance, both intellectually and operationally, that we can't afford.
Yeah.
100%. Well, I'm 51, and with each passing year, I feel my physical age more acutely. You put Bob the Nailer through the ringer in the series, and unlike a lot of thriller protagonists, the wear and tear remains. I mean, he carries it with him from novel to novel. He doesn't just jump in the shower, come out, and he's Superman again. But does that enter your mental calculus early in the plotting of your story? In other words, do you rule out set pieces you might have written for a younger Bob as you start novels now?
Absolutely, I do. And the reason I do that, I'm people such as yourself essentially compliment me on that as if I made some kind of intelligent decision. But it never occurred to me to do it any other way, because Bob's physical condition is my physical condition. And I've had both hips replaced. I've had open heart surgery. I've had 2 kinds of cancer. Somehow, I'm still here, slugging down the Diet Coke and other brown liquids. And I quote one of my favorite quotes, and I'll get it right, is from Dragon Slayer, where Ralph Richardson turns in, I can't remember the name of the kid, and he says, "An old dragon is always in pain." And that is exactly the truth of old age. Everything hurts, everything aches, and you're far more aware of your body than you are, and you're in the little ways in which your facility, your grace, your agility, your dexterity, the way these things have degraded. And to be honest with you, this is a stupid decision professionally. Publishers would rather have an eternal 35-year-old who gets up every morning, eats Wheaties, and
writes for 12 hours. Yeah.
Kicks down doors. Bob Lee Swagger is not going to kick down any doors. First place, he can't climb the stairs to get to the doors, much less have the strength in his thighs to kick them in. And it's not, again, it's just sort of an automatic an osmosis between self and story that happens without too much serious thought to another possibility.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, your quote was a hell of a lot easier than mine. So. But no, that's another thing I wondered about was the ageism in entertainment, not to the author, but to your characters. I was wondering if you got a lot of pushback. Hey, let's do young Bob Swagger again. Let's do Earl in 19, whatever year.
Well, yeah, I do get pushback in that direction. And generally, I am dismissive of it. However, I don't want to come down too firmly on that idea, because I don't want to pigeonhole myself.
Yeah.
Because as we discuss, my next novel is done, and it indeed features a younger Swagger. And it features Earl Swagger, and it features him in the year 1944, in the middle of World War II, and a very peculiar adventure that he has. Writing it was great pleasure for me. I believe, although this may be delusionary, but it's one of my best books. It'll be out next year. I'm way ahead of the game. I mean, I'm like Stephen King. Well, I'm not like Stephen King, but I mean, they'll be publishing new Stephen King books until the end of the century because he's so far ahead of the publishing game.
Yeah.
I'm not ahead of the game that far, but I'm a little ahead of the game. And it was, I have to say, I'll be honest with you, it was fun to set a book in 1944 and to show Earl as much younger. He was in his early 30s then. He was very vigorous. He's very smart. He's very tough, and a very good, shot. And the guy you'd want next to you in combat. So I may, sound sulfurous on the issue of the purity of Bob Lee Swagger, but it's a hypocritical sulfurousness in that I very happily went back to a younger Earl Swagger and loved every second of it. So in other words, the answer is I contain multitudes. Part of it is I am a hypocrite.
Whichever personality we're talking to today. That must have been pretty freeing though to go back in time like that. So
and that's kind of your wheelhouse of interest, right? Isn't that where didn't you say something in an interview that's kind of your formative, where your fiction voice kind of formed in the years post World War II?
Yes, it was. And in fact, for me, World War II was my childhood. And that's because I was born in 46, the very beginning of the baby boom, and meaning I was 4 in 1950 and 14 in 1960. So those 10 years are when you're the most open. Everything you learn then you never forget. I still remember it.
Yeah.
In those days, wherever I looked was World War II. The movies were about World War II. The magazines were about World War II, both highbrow and lowbrow. Popular culture was saturated in World War II. Right. And of course, that would all change in the 60s when my generation, it wasn't really I was a little early, so I'm not quite classic baby boomer. I never really connected with the 60s. I did connect with the 50s. Many of my ideas remain 50s ideas. My idea of a movie star is still John Wayne, and everything else is something that I was aware of. Everything that happened from 1960 on, I was aware of it, but I didn't quite approve of it, even if I didn't have the courage to be a nonconformist, because at that age, one is very conformist. One wants more than anything else to fit in. And that's exactly where I was in the 60s. I even had, you'll laugh at this, and all the Bob Lee Swagger will laugh at this, but I even had a pair of bell bottoms. I mean, the creator of Bob Lee Swagger should not have owned bell bottoms.
I would love to see a picture of that.
Well, actually, I'd like to see you incorporate.
There's no record.
I'd like to see you incorporate that into the book and have one of your characters have to put them on.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, to blend in with the crowd.
That would be a pure comedy situation for sure.
Well, I know we're looking forward to that. So in Targeted, the legal maneuvering is really detailed. I when I was reading through, on the congressional side of things and the legal maneuvering that people were using, and I'm no one with an experience in legal matters, but just reading it, it really came alive. And so, do you have folks you run things past when it comes to the law and its usability in your storyline?
No. Next question. No, I'm just regurgitating, as it is with my battle scenes. I've never been in battle. I've never been in court. I don't really know a lot about that, but what I've learned in the movies. And there's probably some mechanism that is filtering everything I do through a movie or a book experience and basically cheating. That is bringing things in, gambits or ploys from old movies but disguising them so nobody, not even me, realizes the original source. A lot of that goes on. It's part of the fraudulence of fiction. I mean, we are fundamentally liars. We make stuff up. You know, we try and make it as interesting as possible. And I try and keep things more or less reasonable. I mean, not probable, but possible.
Sure.
I understand that some of the reverses, some of the wisecracks, that stuff only happens in pop culture. It very seldom happens in the real world, which is boring. And in the real world, people go to the bathroom. And in pop world, nobody ever goes to the bathroom. And in the real world, there's no background music or backlighting or soft focus. So it's the real world. And the place I'm trying to get and stay is a projection of the real world that is believable. And to the degree that you're willing to forgive or not get terribly excited about, you know, fantastical happenings. You know, one thing I decided to do, and I've done over the past 4 or 5 books, is my heroes always get hurt. Because in Hollywood movies, the hero, you know, they never get hurt, or if they get hurt, it's in some cool way, like a little scar, you know, and a little trickle of blood. It really looks like Drew Brees. I don't know what it is.
Nobody's ever blown out a knee.
So I try and make them hurt and describe the pain and have that, as you say, have that pain linger and be a constant presence in their lives. Because most people do live one degree or another with some sort of pain, and it affects so much more than we know that it affects.
Sure.
And that's a reality, a real world reality. I'm just trying to imply, not make a big deal out of or make a fetish out of, but just to give it that sense of realism. Like when you get up in the morning and I'm fighting something in my shoulder these past 2 days. I don't know what the hell it is, but it feels like someone hit me with a 2x4 right in the nexus of neck and shoulder. And, you know, again, I don't know what it is, but everything kind of hurts. And that's the truth of most human existence. Nobody feels like Superman every day. And I just getting little details like that into the books is important to me.
Right, because that's real life.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things I'm proudest of that nobody noticed it is in Game of Snipers, Bob Lee Swagger, the great Bob Lee Swagger, falls out of a tree. Now, movie heroes and book heroes never fall out of trees, but real men in their 70s fall out of trees or on linoleum all the time.
That's true.
That to me, I'm proud of that, because that's an issue of reality, or that's a replica or a fragment of reality that doesn't normally make it into books. And getting it into that book, no one in the publishing world said anything about it. It was totally unremarked on. And to be honest, no readers have mentioned it, but it was pleasing to me to do that.
I need to like slap us across the face for not putting that in the questions the last time we interviewed you, because I actually did notice that. I really did. When I was reading it, I thought, I mean, like, I just kind of chuckled. I thought, this is great. You know, it's like, because it's like when somebody, you know, Bob doesn't miss much, but you know, when he does miss, or when something doesn't go to plan, I mean, those are the moments to me that make it more because I'm not a sniper like yourself. I'm not a sniper. Those are the moments that bring it down to me, that make me say, oh yeah, I can see.
Yeah, because I could do that.
You know, if I were that guy, that'd be me falling out of the damn tree.
Which of us has not fallen out of a tree?
No, I have.
But no, I think that's, I actually did notice that. I just didn't, I'm kind of pissed now that we didn't question you about that. Well, bestsellers have been the norm for you for a long time. I mean, you've been at the top of the charts. I mean, your books are, you know, on the front of the bookstore, very pretty much that's the norm. And Target received a starred review from Publishers Weekly. And their quote said, "With this inventive nail biter, Hunter sets a new bar for both himself and the genre," which that's a hell of a comment for a guy with your track record and, you know, 12 books into a series and multiple books outside that series. And I could ask you what drives you to get to the computer after accomplishing damn near everything a writer can accomplish, but that's not the question I'm going to ask because I kind of think I know the answer to that one. What I want to know is, what aspect of storytelling do you think you are better now than, you know, when you started?
Well, I think I have more judgment. Also, if I may say so, I think I'm kinder. It didn't used to bother me to kill people. I killed a lot of people in my books. Well, I've suddenly gotten kind of sick of the killing, and I try and hold it down as far as possible. And I also try and get more humor into the book, and that I'm, you know, as Bob, when you're a Marine sergeant, that's your personality as well as your profession.
That's who you are.
You're not too comical.
Yeah.
But as he's gotten older, he's more interested in wisecracks. I think he's funnier. Though he's still capable of unleashing carnage, as he does in this book. He doesn't. I don't have the need to leave blood everywhere and to kill in large numbers. And I don't know. In that respect, I feel a little bit better about it. You know, it just satisfies me. And as I say, I was reading The Master Sniper, just looking through it. I don't generally reread my books, but I noted that I made the villain rep kill a lot of extraneous people. And I know exactly where that came from. That came from The Day of the Jackal.
Oh.
The Jackal killed everyone who helped him.
Yeah.
And you know, they turned their back and he judo chopped them. He must have judo chopped me the last night. That's where that came from. Anyway, that's where I got that from. And now I wish I hadn't done that.
Oh, yeah.
It was too derivative. B, there's nobody really like that. I mean, that's a conceit of popular culture, that there is a stone cold killer who kills without remorse and without thought and never has any nightmares about it. Even the people that have assisted him. And if I say so, I want these bad people are much more interesting to me if they have secret melodies of mercy in them.
Mm.
For example, Juba in Game of Snipers, I had him actually, you know, he could have been the Jackal. He could have killed everybody
Yeah.
to help him. But I gave him a sort of a human side where he felt a great deal of fondness and loyalty to those who'd helped him. And that made me, I was much more comfortable with that character than if he'd been, and I'd started out, he was going to be this absolute head-biting monster. And I just didn't have it in me to keep him that evil the whole time. And I don't know if I relented or if the good side of the force spoke to me more. And maybe the book would have been better if he'd have been meaner. But to me, it was, again, it had that fabric of reality, and that he did have some notes of mercy in his kindness in his personality.
Hmm.
So those would be a couple of the reasons that I think, a couple of the things that I think I've learned, technical things that I've learned. It's real easy to kill a book with too much exposition. It's real easy to kill a book with too many flashbacks. It's you can do flashbacks in movies much better than you can do flashbacks in books. It's real helpful to control the number of points of view. I hate books where, suddenly on page 430, we're getting the point of view of someone we've never even seen in the book before. That never works. What it illustrates is that morning, that author couldn't think of a thing to write. A new person.
How do I finish this? Oh, shit.
That wasn't a point of view. That was a cry for help.
That's called a deadline. Well, in Targeted, we see passages of swordplay from an earlier era in history. And you even incorporated some swordplay in the 47th Samurai. I have a unique appreciation for this because my oldest teenager competes for the U.S. Saber team. How did you go about researching for that portrayed duel, or where would you have gone for some of that information? Because it even read differently, like your usage of the wording and everything seemed to play up to that era and time as well.
The whole point of the book for me was to write that duel. And all the time that I was leading up to that duel, I got totally immersed in the samurai movie.
Yeah.
And there were many people don't particularly like that book. And they say to me, it's not a very good book. And I say, yes, but it's a very good samurai movie. So ha ha on you. And, I must have seen 5,000, well, I'm exaggerating, but 500 samurai sword fights. And I thought a lot about the choreography. I tried to think rigorously about what the difference between a good one and a bad one was. I acquired some swords, one rather expensive. I've still got them around somewhere. I acquired an enormous amount of extremely esoteric books on swords. I acquired books on kendo. I acquired books on all kinds of exotic martial arts. And I read each one of these books page cover to cover, and the answer is no, I cannot say that. What I can say is I browsed, I read this and that. I sort of assembled it, not coherently, but episodically or surrealistically or incoherently in my mind. I just built up information. And then when it came time to write it, I just wrote it. And I hope that all the even incoherent preparation I did for it paid off. And it makes me very happy. Your kind words about that scene are very, very pleasing to me all these years later. Because as I say, I just inside baseball, I had seen and really enjoyed Kill Bill Part 1. And at the same time, I understood that it was ironic, that it was, that the demotics, the signs of it being a fantasy were all the way through it,
Right.
And no one took it seriously.
Yeah.
And it's a technical challenge. I wanted to write a fight where two guys fight with katanas in downtown modern Tokyo to the death. And it's not ironic. It's not cute. And there's nothing about it that's where you wink, where you feel the characters winking at you, or the director saying, "Hey, get a load of this move." And I just wanted it straight dead on, even sometimes in a way that Kurosawa didn't get in his great samurai movies. Just make it a battle to the death, and as intense and clumsy and desperate as that situation would be. And that was, to me, that was the point of writing that book, to write that scene. That was my goal. Whether it was achieved or unachieved, your mileage may vary, but that was what I was trying to do. And doing that, am I telling you that this was a great humanitarian move on my part? No, it was entirely self-indulgent. But I pretend that if it pleases me, I hope that it pleases others. And it did please me. It pleased me a great deal.
Oh, I loved it.
When our authors start writing books for humanitarian reasons, I'm out anyway. So please write it, because indulge yourself and entertain. That's what we want.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you one thing? I also put a sword fight in what's the name of this book? Oh, Targeted.
Yeah, that's what that
was. Did that please you? Was that cool?
I loved it. Well, for me personally, I travel all over the country, and actually we just got back from Europe with my oldest. He fences for the U.S. Saber team, and so that's
right. That would be automatic. Yeah,
that's my world right now. Is like every week we're traveling somewhere else in the country for this sort of thing. So when I got to that scene, I was like, I kind of rubbed my hands together, and I'm like, oh, look at this! I was so pumped up. It was fantastic.
When your son is victorious, what do you do with the heads?
Well, I haven't lined them. I haven't lined around my yard. So
good.
Luckily, I'm a taxidermist, so it's that's how we met. I'm a taxidermist.
Yes,
he's undefeated so far.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
I would guess that's a. I mean, I know the swords are blunted, but when you strike someone full, you must leave a welt for a year.
They wear multiple layers. The other two, epee and foil, there really isn't that. But in saber, it is a slashing motion 9 times out of 10, and so you feel it, especially when you get hit in the mask, which is a metal object in your head. It rings like every time you're catching a punt, looking up with nobody blocking somebody coming downfield for it.
Yeah,
it's pretty tough. Yeah.
Well, Stephen, we have a lot of writers who watch the show. So in addition to just fans of the books, we like to ask questions that deal with the process. In several of your books, you juggle multiple timelines, whether it's Bob and his father, Earl, or his grandfather, Charles. When you were writing those books, do you do that sequentially, or sequentially in the order of the book? Or do you write Bob's story or Earl's story or Charles' story? How do you approach that?
Generally, there was one exception. I write them sequentially, and I leap back and forth because I like to feel the suspense that the back and forth generates, because I'm always playing the rhythms and the scenes off against each other. In the one example, exception to that was the third bullet, where if you recall, a great deal of it was a first-person narrative by the villain. And in that case, I wrote that in one swoop, and because I wasn't sure, I'd never written first person before, and I didn't know if I'd be able to do it. And yet when I took it up, I actually found it A, quite easy, and B, extremely enjoyable. And I liked it. I had a great deal of fun with it, finding the voice and finding the, I obviously don't have to worry about point of view in that respect when you're doing that. And somehow I guess that was because I'm always manipulating point of views and points of view, and that can get tricky. If it gets too tricky, it sort of falls apart. And then I came back to that in the Jack the Ripper book that was written from two separate first-person points of view. And in that case, however, I interspersed. In other words, I didn't write one complete story and the other complete story as I had done in the third bullet. Uh, and so, yeah, I am conscious of that. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I had to do that is commercial, is that, you know, I do, as Hemingway said, I write hardcover books for money. And it turns out there are a whole lot of people that not a lot of people are interested in my take on 30s outlawism. So if I want to write a book about outlaws in the year 1934, I've got to, which is, I did want to write that book. I've got to somehow bring Bob Lee Swagger into it. In fact, the breakthrough in that book was realizing that Bob had a grandfather, and that the grandfather fit perfectly into the timeline. And I'd been carrying that idea around with me for a long time, trying to figure out how to do it. And when I realized I had the Swagger entree into it, I thought I could get away with it. Although when you're, one of the problems I have with this stuff is that you need some physical representation of the old time in the new times. And so I'm forever finding, oh, look, a lost manuscript, or hey, there's a diary, or stuff like that. And it's, even I say, you know, Steve, this is getting a little old. This is the fourth consecutive found diary in your oeuvre. Maybe someone is going to say, I never found a diary in my life. How could this guy find 4 of them? So I, you know, maybe I'll back away from that. There's no diary in the World War II book. That's just set straight in World War II. Bob doesn't discover something, and that takes him on a journey to discover it. I was very happy that my new editor and publisher, Emily Bessler, just wanted the World War II stuff. And it was, and just frankly, that was a relief, not having to construct, you know, not have to find any more diaries.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he left a note folded in his Zippo lighter. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good, Steve. That's real good.
90,000 words.
Lighter trick.
Oh, I would be remiss to not bring up a character that works with Bob Lee at the end of the book, Delta, who kind of a mystery character, and he obviously earns his keep by keeping Bob alive at the very end, between with Bob putting himself out there for one last kind of stand with the final bad guy. Is this somebody that we're going to see periodically? Or does he have some sort of intent on
all the time? And people seem to like him. I have no idea who he is. I have no idea where he came from. He was originally, he's not on any outline. He was, he originally, you know, I wrote that first thing in that odd tone of voice, the ambush in a third tier gas station near the Jersey Turnpike. And he was just supposed to be the guy who got away, who told the Russians that these folks had kidnapped or had hijacked their load. But I liked writing him. He was very interesting to me. And so I just couldn't make him go away. I kept wanting to go back to him, and I enjoyed a great deal writing him. You know, and as you guys both know from your own work, the trick to these books is to keep that narrative, that tension between 2 or 3 narratives going, keep it coherent, but also to keep tightening it. And he was very sort of, from a technical inside baseball point of view, he was very useful in that point of view. Plus I got a chance to write a scene in which I expressed all my anger and disillusion at being forced to low crawl in the Army 50 years ago. Low crawling is the worst form of transportation I've ever. I was never any good at it. I just sucked at it. And it just struck me as funny. This guy is a Green Beret with 20 years in the Army, and then another 10 years, obviously, doing stuff for people off the books. And he says the only time he ever low crawled in his life was in basic training.
Yeah.
I'm sure they still make him low crawl, but I got to evoke, not only did I get to evoke it once, but I evoked it twice because somehow I accidentally destroyed that chapter. And I was one night, when I was sending it somewhere the next day. And so I just, out of nowhere, I just had to rewrite that chapter again. And I've heard from several people who've been in the service, boy, you really got low crawling. And it's pounded so deep into my pathetic little hoard of memories that it just came gushing out. So that's I got my low crawling Jones off. It's a pointless scene. It doesn't, it's not necessary except to break up the rhythm of another scene, of something else going on. The other thing about that whole thing that I enjoyed very much, I don't think anybody has ever gotten the culture of explosions right. In every movie and in every book, a huge explosion goes off next to the hero, and he says, "Oh, hey, how about that?" And then he's just right back. And in point of fact is with an auto accident, as I do know, when something calamitous and loud happens to you, it knocks you into Goofy Town.
Yeah.
You're not yourself. Everyone knows this, but it's a conceit of pop culture that it doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. So in this book, dealing with Goofy Town and taking advantages of the trip to Goofy Town is very much a feature of the book that I had fun writing, and I hope other people do. Yeah. I only point it out because I'm a vain and narcissistic.
Well, the explosion got dealt out of a situation, so
yes, right. Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Hey, you survived the main portion of our show today. So I don't know if you recall, but we have something now called the lightning round, and this will be series of 3 questions from each of us. There are no right or wrongs. This is just a Rorschach test to see where your mind is at these days.
Okay.
So I am going to go
first. My mind is nowhere these days. So
well, we'll find out soon enough.
If at all 6.
All right. My first question is this. With the ever improved 9mm cartridge, does the .40 caliber deserve some of the bad rap it's now starting to get among some of the shooting community?
In my opinion, yes. I'm not a .40 caliber fan. In order to make it work, they need a very fast powder. Fast powder equals heavy recoil.
Yep.
I think it recoils heavier than a .45 for less power.
Right.
I'm happy to see law enforcement getting over it. I mean, it was sort of, the gun world is fashion, and things become fashionable whether they make sense or not. And the .40 was very fashionable after the Miami shootout when a 9mm hollow point failed. Right. Well, 9mm hollow points have been much improved, and they don't fail much anymore. Right. So I have no, I feel no weakness at the, I feel no sadness at the demise of the .40.
Well, I see one of your characters died early in the book with carrying a .40, so I figured as much.
Yeah, so not only do I kill him, I kill the caliber.
I know. All right, number 2. Is there any particular shooting platform that you've used recently in the range that surprised you either in a good or a bad way?
That's a really good, see, I mean, my shooting, one of the reasons my shooting is different than my writing is that my writing, I've stuck to 2 forms, the novel and the movie review. And that's all I've done for 50 years. And maybe I've gotten pretty good at them. Maybe I haven't. We'll let other people decide that. But I've certainly tried my hardest. With the shooting, I go through phases where the only thing I can think about is sporting clays. The only thing I can think about is bench rest. The only thing I can think about is hunting, shooting for blood. The only thing I can think about is IPSC. And in all of these, what happens is I dedicate my imagination, my shooting portion of my imagination, to that task. And I spend way too much money, and I acquire pieces that I'll never be good enough to get much out of.
Yeah.
But I get pretty good. And then suddenly it dries up and it blows away. And I look for a new room in the mansion of shooting culture to, to have some fun at. Recently, my thing has been, I've been trying to shoot fast. And, I watch TV or on the net, you see all these guys shooting, and they can shoot 5 9s in, 0.6 of a second. I give a little of that to Delta. He's a very fast shooter.
Right.
And I've tried everything, but the gun rises so much that I have to bring it down, and that eats up time. And I want to, what I want? I want to see like 5 shells suspended in midair.
Frozen in the air.
That means I fired it so fast that the first shell hasn't hit the ground yet. Now you can do that, but you don't hit anything.
Yeah, well, you can take down an airliner.
Yeah. Right. The trick though is to hit something. And so I've been dedicated, spent a lot of time on that. I'm still, even at this age, I'm still trying to improve my marksmanship. And I believe I've actually come up quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years because I've concentrated on one thing, and that's trigger pull.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Every cheesy Chinese-made trigger pull device in the world. I have a museum of trigger pull, exercisers and simulators, from $400, Cirque mock pistols to 29-cent squeezers or little balls to squeeze. I've got them all, and it seems to have paid off a little. I'm still nowhere near some of these guys, and what they can do these days is just astonishing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I answered your question, but let me just, I think the answer is
an interesting story though.
Well, shooting fast, that's a lot of fun. I just wish I could shoot fast and accurately.
Yeah.
But the only way you can shoot fast and accurately, if it's a big target and it's 8 inches away.
Just get closer.
Then you are Bob Leahy.
Just let that grizzly get a little bit closer to you. All right. My last question is this. Do you see the Navy ever committing to railgun technology?
No, I don't keep up with that as much as I can. But people have been trying to replace gunpowder for 100 years.
Yeah.
And, when you stop and think about it, gunpowder, particularly as encapsulated in this the devil's thumb, I call it, called a cartridge, that is among the most long-lasting technology in the history of human innovation. I mean, the work on that was done in Paris in the 1840s. And here we are, all these years later, close to 200 years later, 180 years later, and no one has really come up with anything better. Maybe railgun, maybe lasers, I suppose, but it doesn't seem like the railguns, they get that stuff moving so fast. But I have my doubts. We need to do more before we get a real game changer. And it doesn't seem to me that we're close enough to make a prediction yet.
Sorry, it's my son hugging me.
He's trying to get on the show.
Live show.
It's his son with a saber.
Yeah. My guy would have just plunged it right through me.
Yeah. I completely threw off my train of thought. I was actually going to comment on something you said, but I'm going to go to my 3 questions. At once upon a time, as you mentioned earlier, you were a movie critic. What is the best film you've seen over the past few years?
I would say Old Henry. It's a small Western with Tim Blake Nelson, made by a director I've never heard of. It's what I might be called there are Westerns of the sky and Westerns of the earth. And it is a Western of the earth. The sky is universally pewter. You never see landscapes. You never see, that pure blue of the Western sky and those towering clouds. You never see that. It's set in Oklahoma, 1906 in the hills. And it's about, it's a fairly sturdy melodramatic trope, which is the underrated man. Nelson plays a cranky old farmer, and his son is 18 and wants to get away, resents him, and his father, over controls his life. Then one day they find a wounded man with obviously stolen money.
Yeah.
And they take him back to their house, and soon enough, the people he stole the money from show up. And they all think this farmer, he's such a hick. And Nelson plays him. Nelson is from Oklahoma.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Plays him with this uber Oklahoma accent. And he's a very, very good actor. And he makes them cunning and smart and feral. And there's just something charismatic about him. And these other guys think he's just a clodhopper. And boy, do they get surprised.
Yeah.
Not a long movie. It's a very expensive movie, but boy, does it ever work like hell.
Yeah,
it's got a great twist. You may see it coming. I saw it coming, but if you don't, even if you see it coming,
still good.
It still works because then the twist is that you saw it coming, and when you find out what it is, and it's really a terrific film.
There's a new series out if you get a chance called 1883.
I've heard that it's really good.
It's fantastic.
Tim McGraw is a revelation.
He's an unbelievable actor.
Tim McGraw is freaking fantastic in this movie. The country singer.
Yeah.
And his wife, Faith Hill.
That's on HBO now.
No, it's on Paramount.
It's on
Paramount Plus, something like that.
You have to check it out. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. You would think they would give me a free subscription just because I lost them $70 million. No reason to be angry at me, is it?
But no, it's really good.
It's a sweep. Gritty. It's kind of a sweeping history.
Sam Elliott, which I'll watch Sam Elliott read the phone book. Watch Sam Elliott read the phone book.
I would love to get a old Bob Lee Swagger movie made with Sam Elliott.
Oh my God, yeah,
perfect.
When I read Point of Impact,
even
when I read Point of Impact, I used to say if Sam Elliott's in a movie, it's a minimum 3.5 stars, even if it's not a good movie.
It's just
he would have been fantastic.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
So, my second question is, and this no timetable, didn't have to be the last few years, but what is a film that received critical acclaim, maybe universal critical acclaim, that you thought was garbage?
Well, I'm not really into it. I actually would have to say, I went and saw another Western about 4 years ago called Hostiles with.
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
The first 10 minutes, I couldn't take it, man. I was like,
it was a load of garbage. It really was.
My sons laugh at me about that movie because, I hate it with a vitriol that's almost like.
Well, the one good thing about it was, doesn't Timothy Chalamet get killed in it?
He does.
Yeah, that was worth seeing. That was worth seeing. But otherwise,
my daughter's gonna hate that line, but that's true.
That's funny.
Okay, my last question is kind of a very general question, because I'd read that World War II basically formed so much of who you are. Who was either your favorite World War II personality or the most interesting battle in World War II?
Well, I think the most interesting battle is Kursk. That was the huge battle as the last German offensive on the Eastern Front. was a monumental battle. It featured either the first or second biggest tank confrontation in the world, and it ended. The Germans won, but they lost. In other words, they carried the battlefield, but they depleted themselves so totally that they were unable to win the battle, and they withdrew.
Yeah.
And they inflicted 3 times as many casualties on the Russians. Their military performed magnificently. The Russians performed the way the Russians did. They said, okay, boys, there are the guns, just sort of run at them. And eventually enough of you will get there so that we'll take the position.
Yeah.
And so that to me is the most interesting battle. The most interesting figure, oh gosh, that's hard to say. I would say Earl Swagger, but that's
That's why we're here.
yeah, okay, self-serving. Okay. Now I would say I still have a man crush on Audie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
I mean, he did some extraordinary things.
I'll pat myself on the back for guessing that.
He is much underrated as an actor. I mean, he was terrible when he started because he had no technique or training and couldn't remember his lines and took a deep breath before he spoke. But he developed into an actor with some, as he got older and sadder, he developed into an actor of some gravitas, and he made several, I thought, brilliant movies. I don't want to say, not The Third Man, but it was a Graham Greene, our man, Quiet American. That's a brilliant movie. He was damn good in To Hell and Back, even though there's a lot of 50s. I would love to see Steven Spielberg remake that movie using the technology and the chops that he learned from make a full Audie Murphy biography, because it was
honestly, it'd be one of those movies.
Very interesting life.
It'd be one of those movies that people who don't know about Audie Murphy would be blown away by. But it's also one of those movies that if you wrote it as a fictional screenplay, it would be Forrest Gump level unbelievable, but like his life is
so frequently things that happen in reality are unbelievable,
right?
And written as a screenplay or a book, no one would get involved in producing.
Yeah. Is it Pale Horse Coming where Audie Murphy comes in? Or am I thinking?
Yes, he's in Pale Horse Coming.
Yeah, okay.
This is an interesting thing. Not to you, but to me.
Again, that's why we're here.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm mixing up my own work.
We'll edit that out.
Okay, I'll tell you, here was an interesting thing. It's similar principle. When he appears in my work, I think his name is Audie O'Brien. But in another book, I refer to him just in passing. And I knew if I called him Audie O'Brien, very few people, only my readers, long-time careful readers, would know who I was talking about. And so I suddenly started calling him Audie Murphy, or that one reference called him Audie Murphy, aware I was violating the rules of my world. And the reason I mention that is in the World War II book, one of the characters who appears is Eric Blair, known to the world as George Orwell, a great hero of mine. And I wrote a book years and years ago. I can't even remember the name of it. It was set in the Spanish Civil War.
Spanish Gambit.
Spanish Gambit, that was it. And he is the hero of that book, but I named him Charles Flory, which is the name of the character in a novel he wrote that no one remembers. And so in this book, The Bullet Garden, I refer to him and have a scene with him. But the question is, do I refer to him as Charles Fleury and keep it consistent with Steve World, or do I refer to him as Eric Blair and keep it consistent with World? So what do you think I should have done? Tough one. Huh?
I would have gone Eric Blair, just because my personal opinion is that's one of those like sort of inside baseball things where people who know who that is.
Too far inside baseball.
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
I like that. I like reading something and going, I know what he's talking.
It's like an exclusive club, you know.
Our mutual friend Jack Carr will throw stuff in his books, references, and a lot of them are pop culture related. And I love it. I love reading something and I'm like, I know what he means. Yeah. And maybe nobody else does. Maybe nobody knows it's a Magnum PI reference, but I did, and I like that. So that's my own personal preference.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll do that then. I mean, it's still in play, so I could still change it. I'll see what they say in New York. Now, in New York, they're going to say go with Eric Blair, just because, you know, that's
it's less words to print.
Yeah. Our millions of viewers are going to know this already. So
Hey, Stephen Hunter's Targeted, his latest Bob Lee Swagger book. Folks, this was fantastic. It is everything you expect from Stephen and more, and I loved it. For me, it was an incredibly fast read in the best of ways, and so it was wonderful to see Bob Lee back in action. Just made me feel like kind of an old friend showing back up at the house and giving me his latest adventure. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. You guys were
great. I had a lot of fun.
Great. We can't wait to read the old new book coming out next year. We're looking forward to it.
I can't wait to have you read it. I think you'll really like it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Stephen. Really appreciate coming on the show. Shawnee boy, we had Stephen Hunter on the show today, his second time through, and his latest Bob Lee Swagger book, Targeted, bringing a little bit of the headlines into fiction, and in a way that you kind of got a chuckle, but you also kind of saw the potential there. And so it was phenomenal. It was good to see Stephen back with Bob Lee. We all love it. This guy originated the thriller genre almost single-handedly. So it was wonderful to see. So anyway, folks, go out and buy Targeted.
Absolutely.
And we loved it. And so will you. Cheers.
Cheers. See you next Monday.
Finger point out.